Welcome back to the Ross Bolen podcast, presented by Bolen Media. I am your host, Ross Bolen, and today I will be joined by writer, stand-up comic, and content creator Jamie Kilstein. Jamie was last on my show in May of 2022, when he was actually experiencing homelessness and struggling to figure out what he wanted to do next. So I'm incredibly excited to check in with him and let all of you know what he's been up to, because I obviously know already. He's one of the most authentic and filterless people I have ever met, which I appreciate a great deal because I consider myself to be cut from that same cloth. His new show is called The Back Row with Jamie Kilstein and is available wherever you find the Ross Bolen podcast. So without further ado, I'll bring him in. Here he is, Jamie Kilstein. Coffee was like, or caffeine, I guess, technically.
Yeah.
Was like substance number 4.
Yeah.
That I had absolutely zero willpower with.
Bro,
it's just like, God damn it, every single thing.
Ended up in the hospital.
No.
Bro, I swear to God. I stopped drinking right around when I started getting, I was getting booked for like big festivals overseas. And so I was backstage with like, it was the first, I was still super poor, but I was backstage with like, Green Day and Tool and all these bands, just even though I was in the little comedy side stage. In the States, the comedy tents are just treated like utter trash, but over where they're just like, oh, where's the clown tent? Yeah. But overseas, the comics are like revered,
Respected.
Respected in the slightest,
treated like humans.
And not completely shit on all day. So we got to be in the same, whatever. And so it was the first time I had like catering. It was the first time all this stuff, but I wasn't drinking. But, I'll always have poor person mentality. So, like, if there's a buffet, I will eat till I have to be, like, hospitalized.
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
you got to take advantage.
This is my one chance to eat until it all comes crashing down. Is sort of how I always think. And so I don't think I've had a Red Bull since I was, like, 16 years old. But I just, without kind of thinking, I just want something in my hands when I'm talking to people.
Oh, yeah.
I start drinking Red Bull. And cut to me in the hospital with like such a bad migraine, I thought I was like throwing up.
Oh, dude.
Because I didn't even, because in my head, I'm like, this isn't alcohol, so this is okay. And I must have had like 12 Red Bulls.
Oh, God.
And I like called my dad and I'm just like, I'm in the hospital. And he's like trying to figure it out. And then I like very casually was like, he's like, what could it be? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, like I had like 12 Red Bulls, but that's fine, right? He's like, no. He's like, that's 100%. And I don't think my caffeine intake has been the same since then. I think I permanently damaged myself.
Dude, it's fucked up. Like, I used to go, we'll just start, by the way. I used to go, for like annual checkups to the doctor.
Yeah.
And they would ask you, like...
Good for you. I think most of us don't even do that.
Oh, I don't do it anymore. That's what I'm saying. Used to go. Like, when I used to go,
sure.
I only went and did these when I was still, like, treating my body terribly and living like a heathen.
Right.
So they would be like, how many alcoholic beverages do you have a day, right? And, like, any question the doctor
You're like
asked
enough
me,
to make the sadness go away.
My answer would always be very alarming to them. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And the messed up part is that, like, now that I live a relatively healthy life and make, like, consciously good decisions about what I'm putting into my body and what I do on a day-to-day basis, I don't even go to the doctor anymore. No. So I don't get the reward of feeling like when they ask, getting to be like, how many alcoholic beverages do you have a day?
You're like, sit down,
0.
doc. Yeah.
Absolutely none.
Hope all the nurses come in and just start clapping
exactly.
slowly.
Don't they have like a party for you or something? Like, then I'm like, what's your diet like? Be like, well, my wife's a nutritionist, so we eat pretty healthy in my house. And then there's like a firework that shoots off behind me or something, but I don't have any of that. So there's
you just got a big balloon that says Whole Foods only.
Exactly. I went to the doctor at the wrong point in my life. I should be going now so they make me feel good.
I don't know if this is going to disappoint you or make you happy, but I can tell you as someone who is pretty healthy, I'll have like little spirals. Food's my biggest thing.
Yeah.
I'm convinced that actually all of my addiction, like if you're a guy You can't be like, I have an eating disorder, because you're like, that's for hot cheerleaders.
Right.
And that's it. So guys don't talk about it. We just like sadly binge eat during UFC fights and act like it's normal. So I've always had these food problems. So when I drank and when I smoked weed, it was essentially an excuse to, I don't like drinking. I don't like smoking weed, but it was an excuse to eat, which I love.
Sure.
And so besides food though, pretty clean. Whenever I go to the doctor, I get to say, work out every day, don't drink, don't smoke cigarettes. I have never once gotten a congratulations. And this is our addict brain, because we think we're us doing the base level normal thing you should do to not die as a human being does not get rewarded.
That's
oddly enough.
Shit. That is horse. I need the reward. I need the recognition.
I know.
That's how I feel with everything in my life for the most part. I've gotten better at this because it used to be I was definitely the kind of person who I did things specifically for the praise that came as a result of those things.
Yeah, look at us. We're talking in front of microphones to a bunch of strangers.
And then the longer I've gone into my career, like there's been like highs where I get a lot of praise from a lot of different people. And then there's been like, lower points where like nobody seems to give a crap what I'm doing. And I'm just kind of like, I've gotten used to it. Like I've been through enough ups and downs now to where I really don't care anymore. Yeah. It's more about how I feel about what I'm doing than anything. But that took a long time.
It's hard.
Dude.
I feel like I'm starting to get there. I still struggle when it comes to stand up. And then I want to circle back to a wife thing, because I have a relationship issue that ties into this. I struggle with stand up sometimes because whenever I go back to it, and I'm hanging around comics, and I'm not hanging around like a beautiful wife who supports me, or I'm not hanging around professional fighters, or I'm not hanging around, people from my church, right? Like people, I'm hanging around just like bitter ass, hilarious, delinquent comics.
Right.
I start to fall back into those patterns, and not like, oh, I'm going to go get drunk and bang a bunch of girls, but even the way I talk about myself, where I'm not going to walk backstage at Vulcan and be like, guess who just finished his mindfulness practice? Like, feeling good about myself. Like, I find myself almost digging for the shitty things in my life to talk about, because it's funny, it's relatable, it's not me. It's like, hey, I'm still a piece of shit, I'm still whatever. And let alone going on stage and talking about that stuff and having hundreds of people go, yes, talk about being bad to yourself. So I'm really, really struggling. I've taken a break from stand-up because of the podcast and the sketches, or all that stuff's going really well, but I miss it, and I'm thinking about going back in, and I don't know if I have the strength to be physically or mentally healthy in comedy. And I'm realizing it's a me problem, not a comedy problem.
I think it's both. Okay. I think it's both.
Okay, that makes me, because I was like kind of lying. I'm like, it's kind of a comedy problem.
It's a comedy
right?
problem, for sure. Like, it's always been the thing that scares me. Like, I've never done stand-up. I've always been drawn to it. Yep. I'm obsessed with stand-up comedy. I've never gone and tried it because I'm scared of the environment more than the crowd.
Yeah.
I know funny people. I've known them my whole life. I've been one of them. I've been the most degenerate version of it.
Yep.
I know how our brains operate.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go back to where I was.
I'm so glad I brought that up with you. But yeah, I had a comic friend talk to me. I wrote her the other day, and I was like, hey, I want to get back into stand-up. And take in mind, like, I've played all the clubs in Austin. Comedy is going very well for me. I pulled myself out. So I can go up at the clubs.
Yeah, you have the gene, like you have the thing.
I have
enough.
Yeah, and I wrote her, and I was like, hey, I kind of want to go back into stand up. What clubs won't make me want to kill myself currently? And she wrote back to me. She goes, the only thing I don't like about stand up comedy is the comedians. And I'm like, I get it, and some of my best friends are comedians, but I get it.
Yeah,
like
it's hard, man.
It's a rough environment, and you don't want to be that guy who just shows up, puts headphones on, doesn't talk to anyone, and leaves. But I sort of think now with
there might be something to that.
There might be something to that. And with you eventually, there are people who have built such an online presence. You could do like a live podcast tour, and that could be your kind of like gateway to be like, hey, I'm on stage at a comedy club and whatever. Because you see, TikTokers who make one viral sketch and they're playing the improv suddenly.
Right.
But what it could be is maybe I should be patient as I'm building this new audience, which is new audience rules. And then I can just go play for my people. I can bring my own opener on the road. But it's that there is the thing that comedians talk about. It's like, you got to be grinding every day. You got to be out of the clubs every night. But I'm also like, do you guys just not like your families?
See,
like,
I think
you
that's
can be
kinda...
good at I've done it for 20 fucking years. I feel like I could get up on stage twice a week, work new material, and still go out and headline and be fine. But I don't know.
The grind mentality, I don't think it's necessary. I get that it's part of the culture. I understand that that's like if you want to be perfect in your craft, you got to do it like every night. But that's also how you end up completely broken and miserable to the point of by the time you've perfected it, you're not even able to enjoy the fruits of your labor because you're a mess. Right. And that doesn't make sense.
Right. And I think that in the beginning of everything, like if a 26-year-old came up to me and was like, hey, I really want to start stand-up. I've been obsessed with it. I've been too scared. I'm like ready to do it. You kind of got to start that way a little bit. You can't start with like once or twice a week. You need to be writing every day. You need to be going up on open mics. You need to be getting all those like bombs out of your system, which takes like 5 to 8 years to like even find your voice. But you also get to a point where you've done it for so long. If you can hold yourself accountable, if you're a prolific writer, if you're always experimenting on stage, if you're taping your sets, if you're being a professional, if you're not blackout drunk every show or fucking high out of your mind, I don't think you do need to go up on stage every night. I think you can do it to where it's fun. It's like sports. You can't go until you get injured.
Yeah, there's a limit. Yeah. You got to find the balance. You said you wanted to circle back to the wife thing.
Oh, yeah. So when you were like talking about needing, like wanting validation and support.
Yeah.
What's the line between, so me and my girlfriend almost broke up this week, and she's taking the blame for it, which like, what a champ.
Yeah, that never happens.
Yeah, but I realized that I was like, okay, well, what could I have done better? And it started with something she said she was going to do for me that she didn't do. And it very much involved like validation, because I have these fucking mom issues. She's got her issues. They clash up against each other. How much do you, and so one of my things was that I thought I was going to work on is like, you know what? I want a partner who's going to totally support me and like lift me up when I need help, or if I'm trying to get healthy, help me out, blah, blah, blah. But like whenever she didn't do that, I would get so like wounded. And so what I've started to do, so what I thought about today was I'm like, maybe I just need to take full fucking ownership of myself and not require that. But at the same time, you want a partner who's going to give you that. And I don't know the balance between being a fucking baby and being in a healthy relationship.
This is something, it's so funny that you're asking this question.
Okay, good, because as I was talking, I was like, why am I bringing this up?
Dude, this has been a massive focus of my life for the past 2 years. It's a constant battle in my head.
Yep.
For like, why am I not getting, because I crave that too. I'm the same kind of person.
Yep.
And I mean, the place I'm at now is I try to give myself validation as much as I can, and it sucks because you said like, can I just own all of this, right? And that's what I am attempting to do all of the time now.
Like I'm 41. I'm 41. I'll call her and be like, killed it at the gym, just desperately needing her. Like my workout isn't done until she says, "Good job, boo," and then I'm like, "Yay!" Like it's so childish,
dude. It's hard. It's a weird thing, but I'm the same way where I'm like, I want acknowledgement and praise, and I want somebody to tell me, good job, you're doing the thing.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, I need that. And like in therapy, what I've learned over the past couple of years is, even if that's the kind of person you are where you crave that praise, you have to train yourself to give it to yourself. You have to, basically in a relationship, the way I look at it is, I have to put myself in a position where I would be completely fine alone.
Yep.
And that I can give myself everything I need. And then and only then can I be a good partner.
Yeah.
And I've learned this in a marriage, in my second marriage now, where I'm like, I've been married for over a year, and in the first 6 months, I kept bumping up against this.
Okay.
I was like, why am I not getting like...
I'm literally writing this down.
What the hell? Like, why am I not getting as much like praise, attention? And it gets even weirder when you have kids, because you're just so burned out that neither of you have the time or energy to praise each other.
Work on yourself.
Or not to work on yourself necessarily, but to like... be giving each other thumbs up and pats on the back for like the work that you're doing.
Right.
That part becomes really, really challenging. So now if I catch myself in that zone where I feel like I didn't get some acknowledgement that I wanted, I have to sit with it and ask myself, like, why is it that I need acknowledgement from an outside source? Even if it is my wife, who I love more than anything in the world and is an incredible supportive woman, I still shouldn't need her to tell me when I've done something good because I already know it was good. That's why I did it in the fucking first place.
Right.
So it gets all muddled up in our heads, but it's gotten easier for me, like, day by day. And even a recent example was, and I tweeted about this at some point, or X'd or whatever.
Yeah. I've been off Twitter pretty much, and every time I log on for a second, I see you tweet. You've almost pulled me back in. You were like talking about the bear, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna text you. If I want to talk about the bear, I'm gonna text you.
There you go. That's the move.
Instead of like the toxic. Okay, sorry.
That's the move. So I started working out really regularly, like the most regularly I've worked out since probably high school, and I got like a couple months into this. And I kept like waiting for my wife to say something. I was like, "Come on, the body is really improving. Like you gotta give me something here. Give me a piece of candy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a doctor all over again.
And it kept not coming. And I was like, well, why? Like, if I can look in the mirror and know that I look good, and I can go and work out and know that I feel good, like, why does it have to go beyond that? Why does there need to be a ribbon or whatever?
And I would say, what if you didn't say anything, and what if you just started acting infinitely more confident around her instead of, and I'm telling myself this too, instead of needy, give me a cookie, give me a cookie, is then all of it going to come together, and suddenly she's going to be like, yo, you are hotter. Like, because it's not just,
I think you're absolutely
losing
right, though.
fat.
That's
it's like
how
the
it works.
confidence that comes with, I go to the gym every day.
Definitely.
Whereas, like, if I'm going to the gym every day, I could be the most shredded I've ever been. And if I come home and I'm just like, I'm sad because you didn't say my abs look good, it's like she's going to be like, you look like a more jacked pussy than when you were out of shape and at least funny and confident, you know?
No, you're exactly right, though. And you can even, I can even feel that in my head. I'm like,
oh, don't you
if I
hate it?
just powered through this, it would all start to click. Why can't I? I can see it like on the horizon. I'm like right there, but then at the same time, my inner child is like, but I need validation.
I know. And then those, this is why like a lot of those like red pill bros on YouTube blow up, because it's not like, no one can ever tell. What I'm trying to do on this stupid podcast is just like make like, hey, there's a middle to everything, right? And like, you can, all these red pill guys just go, just ignore them. Just be a dickhead, whatever. And in a weird way, sometimes that works.
Yeah, it's just their messaging that I don't like.
Well, it's the messaging, and also that can get toxic because what's your end game? Your end game is to use girls or sleep with as many girls as possible, right? But I think the middle is, no, you just don't have to be needy, and you should be confident. And like, you can use that in a relationship with your wife, not to go to the club and like, nail as many girls as you want. The reason that I was okay whether this breakup happened or not, and this is why I actually think this could be the healthiest relationship I've ever been in, is exactly what you said, and I've never had this before. I used to define myself by relationships.
Yeah, big same.
And this was the first time that I was doing so much good work on the outside of the relationship, that I was like, if we break up, just what you said, if we break up, I'm going to be okay. And not only that, I'm probably going to turn into a better version of myself. And if we stay together, I'm going to continue to do all these things to become the best version of myself. And then I'll end up being the best boyfriend as well. And so I think people struggling in these relationships, what I did in the beginning of this relationship is I did my old shit, which is every day we have to have these 3-hour conversations and we're trying to fix it and triage it. And I was like, okay, I'll skip jujitsu because like we got to talk about this, or I'll skip I missed this book deadline because we're in a fight and all this stuff. And once I started being like, dude, again, not ignore her, not treat her like shit, not show her there are other options on the table, but just like go hustle on my own. Suddenly she's like, dude, I'm so proud of you. And like, God, you're waking up so early. Like she started filling it in without me even asking for it, because I was just like, I'm going to work harder on myself than I've ever worked. She could be the catalyst. If you're in a relationship and you're struggling, maybe that's the catalyst, but it doesn't have to be the reason.
Right.
And then you're either going to be confident enough to leave a toxic relationship, or you're going to be such a badass version of yourself that the relationship starts to heal on its own. And that's the key. But my God, it's so hard.
Yeah, it's a forever balancing act too. It's like one of those things where just because you've learned it doesn't mean it's automatic. Or at least that's not the case for me yet.
Yeah.
And I still catch myself regularly slipping where I'm like, this is just me in my head again, needing someone else to tell me that what I already know I'm doing correctly is being done correctly. Today's episode is brought to you by Liquid IV. It is currently hot as sin in Austin, Texas, where we've done over 30 straight days with 100-degree temperatures, so staying hydrated is obviously incredibly essential right now, perhaps more than ever. That's why before every workout and before I go to bed every night, I make sure to mix a stick of Liquid IV in with my water so I'm hydrated 2 times faster than with water alone, plus get essential vitamins and 3 times the electrolytes as leading sports drinks. And huge news, Liquid IV, the #1 powdered hydration brand in America, is now available in sugar-free. Years in the making, Hydration Multiplier Sugar-Free uses a proprietary zero-sugar hydration solution with no artificial sweeteners. You can also keep your daily hydration routine exciting with 3 new flavors from Liquid IV: white peach, green grape, and lemon lime. We have a massive supply of Liquid IV here at the Bolen Media office, which makes us perhaps the most hydrated media company in the entire world. Not only is Liquid IV incredibly effective as a hydration tool, it tastes phenomenal as well, with a variety of great flavors like Concord grape, lemon lime, pina colada, tropical punch, watermelon, strawberry, and passion fruit. 1 stick of Liquid IV and 16 ounces of water hydrates you 2 times faster and more efficiently than water alone. It contains 5 essential vitamins: B3, B5, B6, B12, and vitamin C, with 3 times the electrolytes of leading sports drinks. No artificial sweeteners and zero sugar, with a proprietary amino acid allulose blend for a sweet taste without the calories or raised blood glucose level you get from sugar. Made with quality ingredients, non-GMO, free from gluten, dairy, and soy, Liquid IV also believes that equitable access to clean and abundant water is the foundation of a healthier world. They partner with leading organizations to fund and foster innovative solutions that help communities protect both their water and their futures. To date, Liquid IV has donated over 39 million servings in 50-plus countries around the world. Real people, real flavor, real hydrating. Grab your Liquid IV in bulk nationwide at Costco, or you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use code ROSS at checkout. That is 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code ROSS at liquidiv.com.
So here's a big mental health thing just in general. I heard a pastor talking about it, and I forget what his example was, but he was talking about how, like, it might have just been with Jesus. I don't know. But I taught a jiu-jitsu class the other day, and I gave it to my jiu-jitsu class. I replaced Jesus with fighting. But essentially it goes like this. It's easier to be ignorant. And so what I mean by that is, like, sometimes, especially people like me and you, so I'm sure your listeners as well, we get, like, meaner to ourselves when we know the thing we're doing, as opposed to when we were ignorant. When I was just like a shitty boyfriend, it was a lot easier. When I didn't believe in God, it was a lot easier. When the jiu-jitsu example I gave is there were just a bunch of white belts, all of them so much bigger than me, and they were kind of just, they were opening up and seemed very childlike, and we're just like, how am I ever going to get good? And what I said to them was, hey man, it was a lot easier when, because every guy thinks they're going to be the guy. If the bank gets robbed, they're like, I can beat up all the robbers. Like, we all, like, men just have this thing where we just think we can fight.
We think we're heroes.
Yeah, until we show up and we fight and we go, this sucks. This is so hard. I'm getting killed. And a lot of guys will show up for, like, an MMA class or a jiu-jitsu class, and they'll leave after that class. And they'll just go back to being like, well, if I had my knife on me, it's like, you have a knife? Well, no, but I'm going to buy a knife after this, whatever. And so when you show up, it's so much harder where suddenly you're like, oh, I know I can get my ass kicked. But then what you do is you train. And so it's the same thing where when we think we have the answer, oh, I have to love myself more so I don't need that validation. It was almost easier to be ignorant and just to be like, God, fuck my wife for not saying something, or like, people don't get me, or like, these people aren't paying attention to the podcast, like, what assholes. It was easier to do that. It was a more miserable life, but it was easier to shift the blame. It was easier to think you can kick people's ass. It's easier for, the guy who gets drunk and thinks he's the funny one at the party, and then he tries an open mic and he bombs. It was easier to have these sort of false beliefs. But man, when you start, so you can be harder on yourself. Like every time I do something that changes my life for the good, whenever I still catch myself fucking up, I almost get more depressed. Where I go, fuck, I know I shouldn't be doing this anymore. So now I know I'm even a bigger piece of shit. When in reality, what it should be is like, no, I know I'm going to catch myself. I'm going to show myself grace, and then I'm going to keep working on it. But sometimes, like, yeah, being a person who does the work, like when I thought I was going to break up, I was like looking at all these like dudes who are just so shitty to women. And I was just like, man, maybe that's what I want.
Maybe
like,
that's the move.
They're just sleeping with a bunch of people. They have literally zero consequences. Like it seems very appealing, where it's like, this is the hardest I've ever tried. And like, my God, I'm like sweating it out. But yeah, then you just have to be like, you don't want the easy, vapid, shallow way. That's going to leave you more hungover than just trying to be a fucking better guy.
Yeah, it's the self-improvement thing, man. My therapist always tells me whenever I've gotten in that zone before where it's like I definitely recognize more of my flaws now because I'm a lot more aware. I'm living consciously. I'm paying attention. And she always tells me like improvement is not like a straight arrow up.
Yeah,
it's a spiral in that you fall back into the bad habits on occasion. But when you recognize them and you feel even worse than you used to about those things because now you're aware, you have to remind yourself, like, this is normal. Backsliding or whatever you want to call it happens to everyone on the path to self-improvement. And then there's, like, levity in that.
That's really good.
Forgive yourself, kind of.
Because I wonder if that ties into why I grew up with alcoholics in my family, and it was almost like the longer they were sober, if they relapsed, the relapse would be so much harder.
Yeah.
And it would just get worse. And I wonder if that's kind of part of it, where the backslide happens after being so like me and my girlfriend, we had like the best run we've had, where it was suddenly like, we fixed everything. And we get into this argument that she's visiting her family. We get into an argument over the phone that taps into like all of our old shit. And instead of being like, hey, we have this like great time under our belt, we're all good. We broke up, and she's suddenly driving with her dad to from Indiana to Austin to move all of her shit out. And then I get a text at 4 a.m. where she's like, I've made a terrible mistake and, blah, blah, blah. And so now, which credit to the dad, they're driving back and she's going to fly. And we're just kind of like pretending it didn't happen, I guess. So she like talked to her dad. She's like, I got to go back. Dude, I got to make this work. And
I think that's very relatable, though.
Really?
Yes.
Because we feel like crazy people. And I'm sure all of our friends think we're crazy people. But it was because like we had such a good run. And instead of being super compassionate towards each other when we started to backslide, we just went, it'll never fucking work. And then suddenly, we're driving back and forth from Indiana. Yeah.
Oh, I've probably been through this with my wife like 30 times.
Wait,
yeah.
Really?
Not that exact example, obviously, but like we would go through a long stretch with no conflict, or where we were managing conflict super healthily and communicating in a healthy way and like respectful of each other.
Life is perfect.
Exactly. And then something would happen.
Yeah.
We'd have some kind of a conflict, some kind of an argument, some kind of a disagreement. And we would both get triggered. We would both completely mishandle the situation. And I would walk away from it like, we're fucked. Everything is fucked. Like, this is never going to get fixed.
Yep.
And it's so funny because after probably the 10th time this happened, I would wake up the next day every single time and feel a little silly, right? And maybe not the next day. Maybe it was the day after that, like 48 hours later. But like once you get out of the fog of that backslide or of being triggered or going back to your old habits and the way you used to handle things, you remember like, oh, well, I've done all this work to not operate that way all the time. Just because we got to a bad spot, we both failed each other in the moment, we were both tired or we were both upset or whatever. Like doesn't mean it's all screwed. But that's another thing that took me many times of failure before I got to the point where I was like, oh, now I understand this. So it's still to this day, every once in a while something will happen where we have conflict And I have to remind myself in the moment, like, all right, this feels like shit. This
Don't
feels
give the
like
baby away.
sky
Don't give
is
the baby
falling.
away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But everything is going to be, and honestly, the baby is a nice like foundation because it gives you something,
Dude,
to fall back on where you're like, okay, but the baby.
Yeah.
You know?
I just had this comedian, Jen Fulwiler, on, who used to be like a party atheist, now is a Catholic, has 6 children. And when I was talking to her, actually we did talk about this on the podcast. She's like, oh, the first year of my relationship with my now husband was so toxic, like drunk, screaming at each other in hotel rooms, like total Catholic, just boozing it up and, you know, whatever. And then once they had their first kid, she's like, we've been like rock solid for decades now.
Yeah.
Like where they just was like, all right, it's about this. The silly thing, to bring it back to kind of, this is how comedy can deal with. So before when we were talking about how it can be toxic to just look for the negative stuff being in the comedy scene or whatever. I love that you said you realize how it's silly, because I think she's pretty embarrassed right now. And, you know, I left her a voice memo before I came in here because it's currently her time to drive her dad as they go 8 hours back in the opposite direction, which, like, oh boy, what a drive. And I left her a voice memo that was like, hey, you probably feel very bad right now. And like what I started laughing at it, where I'm like, imagine the toast your dad is going to give at the wedding, like with this story. Like, and I just realized how, like, that word's so perfect, how silly it was. And I complimented her where I was like, hey, instead of like you going nuts and driving with your dad or whatever, the way I look at it is how badass it was that you told your dad at some like roadside hotel, like, we got to turn around and here's why. And you fought for us. Not that he was against us, but like I'm assuming was like, hey, are you sure? Because you seemed pretty sure we were, you know, moving you out. So she obviously had to have that conversation. She's an adult, but had that conversation. Drive back. That to me is an infinitely cooler story. That's what I'm trying to focus on. But I think a lot of people, especially men, and this is where maybe our self-deprecating humor is a positive, when they feel silly, that's when they feel embarrassed. That's when they shut down. Whereas I think me and you, you know, because we do this and we have podcasts and we go, oh, that'll be a good bit for the podcast. It's easy for us to recognize silly. And it's easy for us to like admit like, oh, that was dumb. And that's when I think it can be a superpower, is if it leads to introspection. But if it leads to more self-hate, which is a lot of comedy, then you're doomed. But I love that, like waking up the next day and being like, that was silly. Like, that's a great way to put it. It just takes all that like dramatic pressure off of it.
Yeah, the dramatic pressure is bad. That's the evil getting in there. Yeah, for sure. You mentioned, you know, the self-deprecating nature and how self-hate can fuel comedy. It's still a problem for me that I battle with, where I'm like, I am funnier when I'm depressed.
Said this to my therapist the other day,
and it is such a defeating feeling, like, to go through a wave of depression and to be more productive in my work.
To be rewarded.
Yeah. Where then I'm like, okay, well, this sucks, because even if I work to get out of the depression cloud, then on the other side, I'm like, and now I'm not as funny.
Yeah.
So it's that is so hard to let go of.
I'm less funny, even little things. I thought about today. I've been back into meditation, doing like 20 minutes a day. And I'm like, I think I'm less funny. And today I didn't meditate because I was getting back together with my girlfriend. And I was just like, super loving, super funny, super relaxed, killed it at the gym. And I was like, well, that's not good. That's not good if like this really healthy thing that every expert is like is good for you makes me not good. I do wonder how much of it is a cop-out for both of us. Because again, this is something I'm struggling with currently as well.
And a lot of creatives, I think, do.
I know. But it's like, could we work harder? Could we find different ways to be funny? Like, I don't know.
Oh, most definitely. I think it goes back to what you said earlier. It's the easy version that we're familiar with.
Yeah.
Like, when we feel shitty about ourselves, when we're down on ourselves, when we've got the self-hate thing going, that's just our natural state of like comedic production.
Yeah.
But
also, do we maybe feel funnier and try to be funnier? Ooh, here's something.
Yeah.
Do we maybe feel funnier and try to feel funnier as a coping mechanism for being depressed?
Almost definitely.
So that, so that doesn't necessarily equal that we are funnier.
Yeah.
We're just looking for the joke so much harder, and we're like kind of turning up the energy because we're like. So when I thought I was breaking up, I did my first so it hasn't aired yet, but I did my first solo episode of this new podcast. And what's so funny is the new podcast has like a lot of earnest shit about like faith and mental health and whatever. And this one was just me being like, we're on a delay, so when you hear this, I might be fucking dead. Like the end credits might say like R.I.P. Jabe the 2023. Like
in memoriam.
In memoriam. I like went ham because like we broke up right before we were going to go see the Barbie movie, so I still spitefully went to see the Barbie movie by myself. And so the show is definitely the funniest podcast I've done, and it was that I was spiraling. But if I actually like was a comedian about it and I looked at a healthy podcast and I looked at that podcast, it's like, are the jokes equally as funny? I bet. But was my energy a little more sort of like, good jokes, they have that tension.
Yeah.
And so if you're depressed, if you're on the ledge, if you're, saying ballsier things that you wouldn't be saying if you were healthy, that tension kind of makes everything funnier. That doesn't necessarily mean that you were funnier.
No, I think you're right. I mean, like when I was a kid and I was going through my shit in my teenage years, that's when I learned to be really funny. That's when I started getting like all of this, like my pleasure sensors going off, getting endorphins in my brain when other people would laugh at me because I was like, well, I usually feel sad.
Yeah.
And that made me feel happy.
Yep.
I'm going to try more of that, right? So like that was driven by that, but that doesn't mean I'm not funny anyway. It just means that in that, the way I use it, it's just a different deal because you're coping, right?
And are you looking for it more? Like I wonder, experiment, if we thought of comedy as like a craft instead of a crutch.
Yeah.
If we would just look, really good comics will hate me for saying this. Really good long form improv, like Ben Shorts, people like that, to me sometimes is funnier than the best stand up in the world because it's a bunch of people working together, which I just find it's like the best of music and comedy to me. And when I'm doing improv and making shit with people, suddenly I realize that my day-to-day, I'm way funnier. Whereas a lot of comics, we have very serious conversations backstage, and then like occasionally someone will call someone gay, and it's like, that's what comedy is. And but when I'm around improv, suddenly I'm just like looking for jokes more. I'm doing bits with people a little more, and I'm really happy. And it's just because I'm looking for it more. When I'm depressed and I walk into the gym, I'm also looking for it more because I need the validation. That's the crutch.
Yeah.
I need to make my trainer. Dude, this is so unhealthy. My pastor, I was talking to one of my pastors about this breakup, and the other pastor runs up. He's one of my favorite people in the world. And he just goes, dude, I got to tell you what Jamie said the other day about his breakup. It was so funny. And it was me doing what I do, where me and him were talking outside the week before. Two of my friends came up, this married couple who's like so wholesome. And they were like, Jamie, where have you been? And I said, I've been in a toxic relationship, and like threw my hands up in the air. And my pastor thought that was the funniest thing he's ever seen. So now I have my pastor dude, like the person who should be doing that the least, not even because like, I was so funny about it. Not that that's the funniest thing I've ever said, but to me it was pretty funny. I was so funny about my trauma that my pastor didn't even see that it was a crutch. He talks to people about their marital problem all the time, that he runs up to my other pastor and was like, do the bit about how your life's fucking falling apart, you fucking loser. Do it, monkey. And I was just like, and then I said, I'm in a toxic and now both my pastors are laughing. And it's like, how, and like all my childhood funny sensors are going off like you. And it's like, bro, like I can't even, like even when talking to my pastors, I'm like, if I'm going to be going through this breakup, you fucking goddamn right, I'm going to get some laughs out of it.
Yeah.
Which is terrible. It's terrible.
That's how I just felt about life in general for like 20 consecutive years. And then at some point in therapy, it clicked and I was like, Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, so I could actually change some of this stuff instead of just working with the same problems all the time and getting jokes out of it.
Well, and it's the pendulum swing, right? I think me and you probably, when we realize we're using humor as a coping mechanism, we go, all right, well, time to be incredibly unfunny and intolerable. Where, I know when I stopped doing stand-up, I stopped watching stand-up.
Yeah.
Just suddenly I'm like anti-comedy. And I'm like, fucking comedy, blah, blah, blah. And I just don't watch it. There's probably a middle ground where you can try to be the funniest version of yourself while trying to be the healthiest version of yourself. And like, what a treat that would be if I could be hilarious when I don't want to kill myself.
You and me aren't middle ground guys. That's the problem. I texted you before you headed over here, and I was like, "Hey, do you want Taco Deli? You want anything from Taco Deli?" And you were like, "No, I got fat." I was like, "Damn, dude, okay." I was like, Taco Deli is one of my healthy options in my head.
I know, and I literally wrote, I was like, "You're right. Like, it is healthy when I thought about it," but I was like, "I'll spiral."
Yeah, you have no willpower, is what you said.
Taco Deli at the airport. It's like, if you have one. It's like, I think it's not factory farmed meat, like the tortillas are small. You have like one of those, two of those, you're great. I get to the airport at 5 a.m. I am the first one in line, and I bring 5 tacos to the lounge until I literally feel so sick. I have to like waddle my way to the plane, sleep through the entire flight, wake up, still taste Taco Deli. It's the first thing I taste. And so I have to cold turkey it. Like, I got to lose this weight that I put on during this tragic part of my relationship. Once I do that, because all of my trainers go, no cheat meals for like a month or something. And all of my trainers go, that's not healthy either. Like, because you're going to spiral, you can't, link it to shame.
It doesn't create balance.
Yeah. And I go, I know you're right. But at no point have I ever had someone tell that to me. Just have one cheat meal. Just make Sunday your cheat meal. And then Sunday, I either eat so much I should go to the hospital, or it just trickles into Monday and then Tuesday. And then I'm like, is Sonic really a treat meal? They're not McDonald's.
Yeah, once the seed has been planted, dude.
It's over. And so, like, that's another... But it's all, and this is what sucks too. This is like the humor thing. It's also why we're so good at the things we're good at. It's
because it's all or nothing. Yeah,
it's all or nothing. Yeah. It's why I got really good at fighting. I got really good at comedy. And so when you have these like results that are like, hey, you're making a living as an artist, bro. You're doing all this cool stuff. Like, it's so hard. It doesn't matter that you're miserable. And then again, when you're miserable, you go, the life of an artist.
Yeah.
I'm Charles Bukowski.
It's validated, yeah.
Yeah, and then it's this whole cycle. I mean, dude, what if we could, like, I would love to start a trend of, like, happy artists, but how fucking stupid does that sound?
Nobody wants to hear that shit, dude.
No.
It's like you were saying backstage at the comedy show. You come in there, like, talking about how you've bettered yourself.
Have you guys heard of Jay Shitty, that new age monk guy who,
you're going to get destroyed. Yeah. No, the culture is not accepting of that kind of thing. Today's episode is also brought to you by Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs makes the most comfortable and versatile shorts, pants, and bathing suits in the entire world. I've been wearing Bird Dogs for several years now. They cannot be beaten. I wear them to sleep. I wear them to work out. I wear them to do yard work. I wear them to go swimming. I wear them to do everything. They fit great. They feel great, and they look great. They're the greatest shorts in the world. I've got the Art Fart Knockers, Duffy the Vampire Slayers, Uncle Bucks, and Teddy Rubskins. All the different designs, of which there are many, have really funny names like the Forest Pumps, Marco Pool Boys, Zero Dark 30s, and Tightwads. I have an entire drawer in my dresser occupied solely by Bird Dogs. That's how many pairs I have, probably like 20 plus at this point. If you want to look like money while you're working in the yard or swimming at the pool, Bird Dogs are the move, friend, and their pants are great for the golf course or the office or going out to dinner or hitting the bars. Hashtag versatile. And now they've got great looking polo shirts as well that are just as comfortable as the shorts. So click on the link in the description below to go to birddogs.com/Bolen and enter code Bolen, Bolen, at checkout. They will throw in a free Bird Dogs tech hat like the one you see in front of me with every single order. It's a beautiful hat. Bird Dogs hat for free when you go to birddogs.com/Bolen and use code Bolen at checkout. Birddogs.com, code Bolen. I would say just like people who go and change themselves that do a bunch of self-work and really change,
Yeah.
it's really difficult for all the other people in your life, for one reason or another, to like accept the new version of you, or like take it in a way that's not a knock against them, right?
My
like
goodness,
I've gone
when you
through
want
a
to
lot
stop
of this.
drinking, and like
Dude,
suddenly
oh my
there's
God,
like,
that
oh,
was
so
the
you're a
worst.
pussy now?
That was the worst.
Yeah, and you're like, bro, don't. You're so clearly projecting.
Yeah, it's really, really challenging, and that ends up being isolating, where you're like, all right, well, I made all these positive changes, but now, like, I don't have any of the same friends I had. Now I got to go, meet new people? It's just adding more work on top. You got to get the fuck out of here.
How do you meet more people? By drinking. And now I took that off today. What, am I going to meet people at Taco Deli?
Yeah, that was the hard thing. After I quit drinking, I was like, well, that was the tool I used for every relationship I've ever, every woman, every male friend, every single person I know that I have met over the past, literally from 15 to 30 years old, 15 years straight. How?
Right.
How? What?
Well, and then when you look back, you go, oh, well, a lot of those were shallow and vapid and unhealthy, right?
Yeah, it sucks.
And the idea,
it's a hard realization.
And the idea of being with a partner or being with a friend who is not rooting for you to be your best self, like, that's evil shit. It's bad enough. If you have a drinking problem, if you struggle with food, if you don't want to go to the gym, if you sleep till fucking noon, whatever it is, I don't want to pass judgment, but probably that's something you should be working on, right? So that's your own thing. But if instead of working on yourself, which like that's already a bummer, you're going to then make it your job to shit on people who are doing the thing. And I did this when I was younger.
Sure.
You know, but it's so toxic. And you look at it and you want to be mad, but you just go, man, this person's crying out for help. Like if I was like, oh, you changed now that you had a fucking baby, like seeing how happy you are, you could within 2 seconds be like, Jamie's about to go through a breakup. Jamie's not happy in his relationship. Jamie doesn't know if he should be a dad. Like it's so clearly
but I don't want any of that either. I don't want
shit.
to have to sit there and think about like, I just end up putting so much space between me and people like that because I don't want to have to sit there and think about why they're saying what they're saying. I got enough problems.
That's what. But
you know what I'm saying?
You feel bad about that because you should actually feel good about that.
No, I mean,
because every successful person is like, hey, when you're going for this thing, you're gonna lose people, and that's okay. But then the people you get, dude, it's so much more. The people that I've been attracted to this year who have like come into my life. I mean, some are literally heroes I've had for years. All of them are just like especially the men in my life. I've never had a ton of healthy men in my life. The men in my life are just these like badass dude, good fathers. Like, you know, they're incredible. Even if they're not in comedy, they're like really funny and chill, but they're sweet and like very masculine. That's been super helpful for me because I think a lot about what we do taps into a lot of like good, healthy, feminine stuff. You know, we're vulnerable, we're good listeners, we have to communicate, stuff like that. And a lot of people associate masculinity with like you get blackout drunk and punch a wall. But good masculinity is good. It's confidence. It's working hard. It's wanting to protect people. It's stuff that women have too. But that's good shit. And so even though I probably lost way more friends than I gained, the friends that I gained are straight up molding me into a better man.
Oh,
so
yeah.
you go, the trade-off's fucking worth it.
Yeah, I mean, the long game is just a hard sell, especially when you're in the shit. Like, it's not that I feel as bad about this now, but that the couple years stretch right after I quit drinking, I was
fucking
like,
crazy.
I was so miserable with it
crazy.
because I was like, I did this great thing for me, and now everybody's gone.
Everyone's mad.
Like I'm a much better and healthier person than I used to be, and now I'm divorced and lost all my friends. I was like, what is happening? Okay, so let me ask you some of the questions I have for you because we've just done all of this so far on pure conversation,
pure adrenaline and self-hate.
a lot has changed for both of us since you were last here, which was May of 2022.
I was trying to remember that. Okay.
And I guess first question would be like, when did you decide to start making what I would define as Christian content? Yeah.
So the Christian, before everyone turns it off, so the Christian content I'm making is very much like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Like I didn't know that Christians still take cursing very seriously. So every video I post, there are people like how dare this guy call himself a Christian? He's cursing. And I immediately am like, oh, you're the reason I stayed away from God for so long.
Yes.
Like, I remember you.
Yeah.
And even this morning on a clip I posted for my podcast, someone said that. And I had to be like, hey, man, because like I curse and a lot of people curse and a lot of Christians curse and they feel really bad about it because of comments like this. And if you really care about God and bringing people to God, and if you listen to Jesus, who was hanging out with the most reviled people of his day, tax collectors, sex workers, poor people, people who were rejected by the religious establishment, then it's like you want to be open to everybody, right? So my like Christian content isn't like VeggieTales or isn't like I made a sketch about.
Hey, don't knock VeggieTales, dude.
I actually never watched VeggieTales.
I love the pirates who don't do anything. That's a VeggieTales deal.
Yeah, but I'm not making like, you know,
kidding,
like abortion hell house content. It's very much like I found God. I don't get it. I'm new to it. I feel weird. Here's a sketch about how people use religion to be a dickhead. Or here's a sketch about, you know, I talked about on the podcast how I was like, okay, I'm probably not going to not have sex, but I will take like hookups off the table. So I took hookups off the table. This is, I got baptized in November. So I took hookups off the table. But then I started watching porn more as kind of like a non-alcoholic beer. You know what I mean? Where it's
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
I want to call my ex to fuck her, and that's bad. So instead, I'm going to watch porn, and I was never really a porn guy. Like I wasn't when I was a kid, but I was never really like a porn obsessed guy. And then suddenly I was, because I was Christian, where like...
It's funny how that works.
Dude, it was like, it's like how you start listening to Taylor Swift ironically, and then suddenly I'm like, do I have to go to this stadium tour now? Like, I love her.
$1,200 for a ticket?
Let's fucking go. And so I suddenly was like, oh my God, I'm addicted to porn, and it's because I was trying to do this good thing. So that's what the content's about. It's not...
No, it's not self-righteous. It's vulnerable and it's real.
Yeah.
That's what's great about what you're doing. That to me, I've never seen it done before in the way you're doing it. Like I grew up in the church, dude.
Oh, okay.
I've been absorbing Christian content my entire life.
Yeah.
And when I started seeing you putting stuff out, like on Instagram,
You must have been like, uh-oh.
your reels. Well, I was like, Jamie?
Yeah.
But then I was watching it and I was like, oh shit, this is really, really good. Like this is really, really funny.
Thanks, man.
That in that space does not exist. The vulnerability and the realness. As a guy who grew up in the church and who also is very expressive and curses a lot.
Yeah.
There's always been that weird attitude that like you can't talk that way, you can't express yourself that way, you can't make jokes about this stuff. And that's brutal because it cuts out a massive chunk of the human population who desperately needs to be able to connect with this shit, and then they can't because they're like, oh, well, it's not for me.
That's it. And, you know, not only that, but like the blatant hypocrisy, too. It's like the people in the comment section, it's like you sound a little pride-like, you know, like what are you doing right now besides judging someone else in a comment section on the internet about language when like we both have the same goal, you know? And what's been really cool is I assumed I would just lose all of my secular followers, especially like the celebrity ones. And a lot of them have been writing me being like, oh, I didn't know Christians can make fun of themselves, like period. And so if the goal is like funny first and also being honest, then ideally it won't even, it's not going to seem like quote unquote, whatever the fuck Christian content even mean.
Dude, everything you've put out so far has been completely on the level you're talking about right now.
I love that you love it. I didn't even know you saw that stuff. That rules.
Passive aggressive prayers was hilarious.
So that came from, and that's another thing I'm trying to write, because there were a couple people, for the most part, the comments have been overwhelmingly like incredible. Like that passive aggressive prayers, the biggest thing I've ever made. Like that got to like 3.8 million, I think it's at right now on Instagram, which is hard. I don't know how to work TikTok yet, but I assume on TikTok it would have like 35 billion. But that came, so it's essentially this couple that's praying before a meal and they just start fighting throughout using the prayer as like a catalyst to fight.
Yeah.
And, you know, me and my girlfriend weren't doing that. But what we were, this is my first Christian relationship. It's the first time I've dated a Christian. So what we were doing was like, while we were in this like struggle phase, every mealtime prayer just became so sad and about us. It was just a lot of her saying like, please protect Jamie's heart. And we're just waiting to eat nachos. And so we weren't like assholes to each other, but we like were doing that back and forth. We were just doing like the sadder, less funny version of that.
Yeah.
So I go, man, I wonder if other people do this. And what's really cool, especially about the podcast, is I thought that it would just be degenerates like me who are maybe like spiritual because they do mushrooms, which, by the way, I also have to admit, and I'll get shit for this, that like that's how I came to God, was like straight up psychedelics.
See, but I don't think that's weird.
It shouldn't be.
I don't think that's weird.
No, it shouldn't be. But, you know, again, it's like you have these self-righteous gatekeepers who, you know, I'm not going to get on the podcast and be like, do mushrooms, fuck, and like, you know, say cunt. But like, I will get on and be like, hey, you're still okay if you do those things.
Yeah.
You know, maybe depending on how you drop the
sure.
C-bomb.
Yeah.
If you're just calling all these nuns the C word, then, you know, maybe don't do that.
That might be problematic. Yeah.
Would it be funny? Maybe. But like, I think that, yeah, you have to be, I mean, that's the ironic part, which I'm sure you looking back are just like either livid about or just can laugh about it. The ironic part is Christians should be the least self-righteous because we're the ones who are like, hey, we're so bad. We needed God to like transform himself and then be murdered because that's how bad we are. And we're not going to learn our lessons. And so we needed Jesus, as opposed to acting all high and mighty like we are like the second coming. And it's like, no, it's the total fucking opposite. We're degenerates.
Yeah, that hypocrisy is not only the thing that pushed me away from the church, it's the thing that I think is the most crippling thing that exists within organized religion, period.
100%.
And it's really frustrating to have to look at because I'm just like,
how do you make God look bad?
I really don't know. It's like the thing, and I brought this up on the show the other day, so might as well bring it up again. The first moment that this occurred to me when I was probably 12 years old, and I was at church. I went to a big Baptist mega church in Houston. That's what I grew up in.
It's hardcore.
It was really hardcore in hindsight. But like, there was a sermon one day where they were addressing homosexuality, as they put it, and talking about how basically it's a sin and you're damned.
Sure.
And I was like, well, my aunt is gay.
Yep.
How do I make sense of this in my head? And then like,
you ask her when you both go to hell, buddy.
The more I thought, the more I thought about it, I was like, this is like so hypocritical. Like, we're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself, accept everybody, treat them all with God's love, and know that God sees all of us equally. But at the same time, we're passing judgment on this very specific group of people. Not only passing judgment on it, literally preaching in the church to thousands of people to take this message.
While there are millions of homeless people, millions of starving people.
And that's the problem we're focused on. Like, that's when it started to fall off. Like, the wheels started to come off for me. And it took probably from that point when I was 12 until I was roughly 32, like over the last few years, I've gone through a crazy transition with my spirituality, just because I got to the point where I was like, you know what? Even if it's real, fuck it, I'm out. Because I hate the way the church is set up, and I hate the way this stuff gets talked about, and there's too much hypocrisy, too much self-righteousness, and I'm just out.
Yeah.
And then I had my son, and I'm like, okay, I don't want my kids to just grow up in a world where it's like, this is it. There's no higher power. It's just you.
Just these fucking assholes.
Enjoy.
Yeah.
Good luck. Like, that doesn't seem healthy or good either. So, and like in general, even at the points of most doubt, I still believed at my core that there is something bigger than us.
Yeah.
It's just that I tried to remove all of the organized religion from it and just free myself from that. And it kind of worked, but it also just kind of left me feeling empty. And then I got to the point with my son where I was like, now I have to relearn this crap in a healthy way, though, right?
What's a psalm?
Like just because I had the experience that I had where like the church was a huge part of my life growing up, and then I got to a point where it no longer made sense for me. That doesn't mean I can't do a different version of, or like create a different environment for my kids.
That's it. Because, you know, I've had a lot of people, I think this is just a cheesy church phrase, how they say like, it's not religion, it's a relationship. Like when I read the Bible, I don't get 98% of it still, which sucked when you're a new Christian and you're like struggling and every question you have, people will just be like, just read the Bible. I'm like, cool, I don't fucking understand it. So now I feel worse.
That doesn't get talked about enough either. It's a phenomenal point that has always bugged me where I'm like, I read an entire chapter and I'm like, I don't know.
How does
what
this help
was
my
just said.
marriage?
What
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
what just happened?
Do I sacrifice my son on a mountaintop? I don't get it.
Who talks like this? Who uses these fucking words?
So I think just like when I pray, it's very conversational. It's very like I curse when I pray, or I'm like, hey man, I'm fucking up. Like I'm trying. Like but I really make it authentic. I go outside usually. I'm already in my car.
Isn't it so funny that you would do anything differently though? If God knows your heart anyway,
knows everything,
and then you would sit there and make a clean version of your prayer.
Pretend you know what daily bread means. Yeah,
I remember apologizing in a prayer before for accidentally cursing in my mind.
That was part of the first sketch I made.
That is so nonsensical.
Yes, dude. And so I also got... so I had a similar... I think everyone in our generation who was like run away from Christianity, it was because of the gay stuff. Because the church was so gay. It was because of the anti-gay stuff. So I've said this on right-wing shows where, my only image of Jesus was like George Bush, or like now it's like Mike Pence. And I think I said, it doesn't matter how good your band is. If the only guy promoting that band is George Bush, I'm out. Like, not interested. Because the only thing I knew about Christianity in the news, I was a little older than you, and you had that realization. But like, whenever Christianity was being talked about under the Bush administration, it was as an excuse to like bomb Muslims, or gay people shouldn't marry. And I didn't know a ton about religion. I believed in a God or like a higher power or whatever. And I didn't know shit all about politics, but I was just like, well, this sucks. If this is the only thing you guys are talking about, this is stupid.
That was the nail in the coffin for me, was the politicization. Well, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Politicalization, whatever.
Politicization.
That word.
Yep.
That I just screwed for both of us
the one.
forever.
I know.
That word.
I would never be able to say
when
it.
I noticed politicians were using religion as a tool, I was like, that's it.
Yep.
That's it. And it like started when I was 12. First questions about, why do we hate the gays?
Yep.
And then about 30 is when it started to click for me, like, oh my God, they've been weaponizing religion.
Well, it's people.
Son of a bitch.
I mean, Jesus at his most severe, when he encountered it was the woman who had the affair. This was the like whoever casts stones or throws stones or whatever. This is why I can't believe I get to talk about this shit on a podcast. Because again, I can't quote any scripture.
Doesn't matter.
But no, I don't think so either. Where he said something about, he goes like, you are forgiven, now sin no more. So even when he said, hey, don't do that, like don't fuck around on your husband, he was still like, yo, you're forgiven, I love you. And that's a lot of what we're missing. And I got so lucky that, or some friends would say like God put me there because they speak my language. But the church that I walked into for the first time at the age of 40 was the first church I ever went to. And I literally was sitting in the parking lot before like 8:30 in the morning being like, I could text my escort friend. I could go. I never believed in like spiritual attack until like that shit was happening. Like it was wild, the stuff I was doing to like not go in that building.
To avoid it at all costs. Yeah.
But the church, it's called Red Rocks, and it's here in Austin. And they open every sermon by being like, hey, if you're new around here, we just want you to know like, we're a bunch of screw ups. We're not perfect people. We're just pursuing a perfect God. If you go to a church and they all say they are perfect people, they are lying. They're like, we just kind of brag about us being screw ups. And so my pastor will talk about having sex before marriage. He'll be like, he'll talk about, he's like, don't trust us. Don't put your faith in us. All this stuff with like these pastors who were brought down by scandals, or obviously the horrific stuff that's happened in the Catholic Church or the Crusades. Like that wasn't like, those were people. The whole point again of Christianity is like, we are broken people trying to be better. And, the last thing I'll say on it is just like you said, you got to a point where you were so mad at religion. You were like, even if there is a God, I don't care, I'm out. I think when I started digging into it, I kind of was like, even if I never go to church, even if I never pursue religion, I was like, I actually don't think there's any harm in trying to be like Jesus. And so that's kind of how I started, where I'm like, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to find a church and this shit's still weird and they're a bunch of hypocrites and blah, blah, blah. But I was like, Jesus was pretty cool. So I'm going to try to be like him. And then it just opened up and I fell into the right place with the right people. But now that I'm becoming more public about it and I'm sort of in the sphere, I'm starting to feel the same shit I felt under the Bush administration the clip I posted with the pastor who cursed was about slavery, was about racism, people using the Bible to justify it. It was such important content. And to see hundreds and hundreds of comments just making it about him saying the word fuck, I was just like, this is why people stay away.
I mean, that's also just a perfect microcosm of the internet on the whole.
I know, but Instagram's supposed to be better than that.
It's not. It's fucking certainly not. Like, we still regularly put up clips where I'm talking about the dumbest shit in the world, the least important stuff on the face of the earth, and people will be in the comments like explaining to me with a diatribe about how I'm a moron because I got this part wrong, and I'm just like, yo,
everyone, just
I stay out of the comments, bro.
Let us have fun.
Yeah.
I know.
Seriously.
I'm trying to stay out of the comments too. They got me a social media person, but they were like trying to like post in my voice, and I got so like micromanagey that I was like, I'm gonna do it.
I have to do it all myself. I can't.
I know.
I still do it.
Because it sounds like the dream. And I was just like, I can't.
Yeah. I post all the shit myself, but I stay out of the comments.
That's what that's gonna be my.
You have to do
that's
it.
That's gonna
be what
I do.
It's the only way. But yes, okay, so the new podcast is called The Back Row.
The Back Row. Yeah, The Back Row with Jamie Kilstein. You can go to backrowpod.com or just look up The Back Row on iTunes or Spotify. And then the YouTube channel, that's linked from backrowpod.com. Cool. And I actually have like a killer team, so like everything looks really good, and like I've never had like high production shit in my life. Yeah.
So a lot of it is going to be about your journey into this new phase of your life. And
and I also started. It's a lot of mental health stuff. I also like they kind of pushed me this week to talk about politics a little bit, and which I wasn't going to do. I wasn't going to do for my mental health.
Yeah,
but I also think it is so important. I got fired up, and it actually ended up being really good. And I think that it's so important to, so many times people who like label themselves centrists are actually just like low-key liberals or low-key conservatives. And there's just legitimately a bunch of stuff that I'm like, I see both sides on. And that they're not represented at all. Like in the media, it's either
no, we are not.
So yeah, so when
I tried to do this, by the way, and people were like, "Fuck you."
Yeah, well, both people get mad at you, but off the air or when I go to jujitsu or when I'm talking to normal people, it's everybody.
Yeah.
And my trainer actually said something this morning where he goes, and then they're kind of forced to pick a side. So you go, the hardcore left is pissing me off about a bunch of stuff. No one's really talking about like in the middle. So like, I guess I'm a Rogan guy. And then you go to listen to Rogan. And then if Rogan says something that you disagree with, you're just like, this is my team. So I guess I feel that way, and like, conservatives that are actually like nowadays, which is wild because it was the opposite back in our day, much more open-minded to have, like, I've said far more liberal things on right-wing shows than I could get away with saying conservative things on liberal shows. And like I've had Glenn Beck literally be like, oh, when I like talked about like Black Lives Matter and stuff, he's like, oh, okay, like wild. And so I think just showing people that like, hey, you're allowed to be like, I feel weird about kids going to drag shows, and also feel like I don't think trans people are trying to groom our kids. And like, we shouldn't bully trans people and post like they're the worst thing in the world, or be like, hey, I'm anti-censorship of the left, but like Ben Shapiro was like kind of being a fucking dork when he was talking about the Barbie movie, right? Or even like modern feminism's getting too crazy. And also I loved the Barbie movie and saw it twice in the theaters and did not feel offended that the Ryan Gosling character liked horses, because I'm not a fucking baby and I know how to fuck and I can like fight and I actually am secure with my manhood. Like, I feel like there are things I can say that would get me canceled by the left and things that would be canceled by the right. I think that the worst of the left and the right are actually the fucking same and are total hypocrites and do the exact same thing when it comes to being triggered or when it comes to, whatever. And I mean, honestly, I think the reason I can do it right now is because I'm with a company who's like, go for it. And I have a paycheck and I have a team.
Yeah.
And so if I'm ever when I tried to do it by myself,
oh, bro,
I felt like, and it made me less confident, right? Because you start to do it and you go, this is going to help so many people. And then you only get backlash. You just are like, fuck it. But since I sort of have a team, since I have like a team behind it, I'm like, hey man, if you guys are telling me to do this,
I'll do it.
You want me to do it, I'll do it. I'm going to stay out of the comment section. You're going to keep paying me?
Yeah.
Fuck it. Let's try it for 2 years and see what happens.
Yeah.
So I think it could be really cool. Because even, I don't know if you noticed this, but like the people who started to do that all kind of had to pick a lane. So like Russell Brand, whether you like him or not, was questioning both sides, and then he'd have like a mental health thing and interviewed a bunch of people I really liked. And now from what I hear, he's just kind of gone like full right wing.
She's been boxed in.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I think I've had so many rock bottoms in my life, and I'm so grateful to like have a gig and a house and not, I was fucking homeless last year.
I think you were homeless literally last time you were on the show.
Probably. Yeah. I was very excited about the free merch. By the way, we still use that coffee mug, the Stack Good Days.
Sick.
Yeah. It's one of our favorites.
Hey.
Yeah. Oh, I saw it. I really needed a coffee mug when you gave it to me. I don't foresee myself becoming a self-righteous anything. I think, as long as I have the support and like the show's doing well so far, it's only been up for like a week, and people seem to really like it. I think maybe I can get away with trying to be the fucking guy.
Dude, I'm rooting for you so hard because not just because I know you, because it needs to exist in the same way that I think accessible Christian content that's not holier than thou needs to exist. Like there are so many of us who do not identify as Republican or as Democrat that are just generally concerned with the state of the world and would like to see things be better, that are sick of all the squabbling and the fighting. Every fucking thing I say causes somebody on one side or the other to tell me how they're canceling me, and I'm just like, I cannot make all of you happy. I just want to do my show and talk about what I know. And what I know is that what you just said is correct. The extremes on both sides are so alike.
Yeah.
And they're so wrong.
They would get along a lot better than they think they would.
And there's a lot of hypocrisy there, just like there is in the church sometimes.
Yep.
And again, this is one thing I've learned about the church over the last couple of years, just to sprinkle in some positivity church-wise.
Yeah.
Not every church is the way that the church was that I grew up in. Not every church is so over the top, politicized. Hey, I did the word.
Yeah. We're back.
That you end up feeling pushed one direction or another. They're like, so the church you're going to,
Red Rocks.
Red Rocks. Does it have a denomination to it?
Non-denominational.
See?
And the amount of times
what
they've
a
had
novel
to
idea.
apologize when like new people are in and they're like, they'll do a sermon on like church hurt and they're like, hey man, if you've had a bad experience, like we are sorry you went through that. But again, it was people.
Yeah.
It was broken people.
Yeah, and I mean that I've been to a few different places here in Austin that were non-denominational that I really, really liked, where it's just more about spirituality and like following Jesus, and that is my ticket. I don't want your personal views skewing into the message of the Bible. That doesn't make a even tiny bit of sense. You would insert your own political shit into a religious experience.
The three pastors at my church I've become very close friends with. I don't know how any of them vote. I have no idea.
That's amazing.
I don't know. I don't know, because even if they're talking about sex, they're so honest about it and honest about their past and so kind, where it's not like a judgment thing. It's like, hey, if it hasn't been working for you this way, maybe you try it this way. And then the next week they're doing all this stuff and collecting money to like feed people in Austin. And I'm like, it's funny when you read like the Bible, it's like some of the stuff maybe does sound conservative. Some of the stuff sounds straight social justice libtard. And you just go, yeah, you're probably gonna. The Bible was kind of in the middle, even though it gets hijacked mostly by people on the right. But if you look at Jesus, it's like, yeah, man, there's a lot of stuff that both sides could kind of take claim to.
One of my favorite Trump clips ever, and I'll listen if you're like, oh no, here he goes talking about Trump. I'll balance it out. One of my favorite Trump clips ever is where they asked him what his favorite Bible verse was.
Oh, I haven't seen this.
Oh my God, you gotta watch it,
Okay,
dude. He's like, I have, off the top of my head, there's a lot of, but it's very personal. It's very personal.
Oh,
it's
so
very
good.
personal, so I won't share now.
Yep.
Because I know it's too personal.
Yep.
Then after the or it might have been. It was during his when
because Trump's
he was president.
He's never one to just shoot from the hip and say shit that may be taken. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like, this is the thing that's too personal.
I also loved when he did the photo shoot with the Bible at the church outside the White House, where he held the Bible upside down, and it was like the most prop shit. He was just like, "Yep, here it is. Here's
Hip,
the
hip,
stupid,
hooray."
here's the stupid book you idiots love. Vote for me." And to balance it out, I don't think there has been a president in my lifetime that I believed that they were a religious person or a Christian. I don't think you could get to that job and be a genuine believer.
Wow, that's such a good point.
That's an insane thing to try to compromise in your mind, like, or to try to make sense of. And I don't think it could be done. I don't think it can be done.
No.
I don't believe any of them. All politicians do this. I'm not saying it's just the right or just the left or just Trump.
It never sounds authentic.
Trump
from
was
anyone.
just the most blatantly hilarious version of it I've ever seen, where he just so clearly did not give a fuck.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, but the dum-dums love this Bible stuff.
Guys, if you're a Trump person, that's actually a compliment. We're saying that they're all full of shit. Trump was just the funniest about it.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, that was the thing I said at the beginning of his presidency, that he was far and away the most entertaining politician I'd ever seen, and it was because he wasn't one.
Right.
And just then he decided to go all in on that,
Well,
and now everything sucks.
And that's where the left screwed up, because it's just like when he identified, even if he was full of shit, the brokenness of the system, of the two-party system, of, the swamp, quote unquote, of the fake news. There was truth to all of that suddenly the left started denying. And it's like, no. We've been calling Fox News fake news forever. We've talked about the swamp forever with the Clintons and Goldman Sachs and stuff like that. Don't pretend it's not there just because the guy you don't like is talking about it. Address it and then call him out for his ties to all of that stuff too. And like I said, or no, like you said, like none of these people, to get as far as you can get. I mean, Barack Obama seemed like, I voted for him. It was historic. It was exciting. You look at his family, hear Michelle on Conan's podcast. They seem like the most moral. You go, this guy in the beginning. And then like 2 years in, he's droning weddings. And you go, yep, all right, it can never happen.
It's the same shit. It's all the same shit.
Shit, bro.
Yeah, and that also is a hard lesson that took me a long time to learn. But yeah, I mean,
that one hurt.
No, as far as what you're doing though, I think it's amazing. It's cool to see somebody I know in the content space, creative space, doing something that frankly takes a bit of balls too.
Thanks,
like where
man.
it's like that's a big shift away from you, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And,
well, this is another reason I'm kind of don't know what to do on stage yet with stand-up, where I'm like, even my pastor goes, don't try to be a clean Christian comedian. But also, like, my entire set right now is pretty much about eating pussy, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to write Christian jokes, but I also I want to talk about. So I think I kind of want to tie the two together, because there's certainly never been a filthy Christian comic, but I'm kind of thinking about like I have a whole chunk on how porn is too mean for me nowadays. That was crushing before. I can tie that into the whole conversation we had about trying to quit porn because I'm a Christian. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a way to do...
definitely something there.
Because I don't want to do our usual pendulum swing when suddenly I'm just like an unfunny Christian comedian who doesn't curse.
Yeah, that's tough.
But yeah, I'm good. That's when
Just keep the realness in it.
I think that's it. But dude, thank you too, because I'm still not ballsy enough. I didn't even know if we were going to talk about the podcast. I had no idea your spiritual beliefs or whatever. So that's so cool that you opened up and were willing to talk about it, and that you like it. You should definitely come on my podcast and we can talk about this.
For sure.
But that made my day. I had no idea I thought we were just going to talk about how we're depressed. So this is very nice.
Oh, we could have done that. But
talk about Jesus.
I feel like we did that last year, So this year was about
being depressed with Jesus,
making legitimately good Christian content that people can identify with, and then next time we'll do the whole hour on eating pussy.
Right. Or it'll be my Christian life has fallen apart. This is the new thing I'm doing.
I do think if more stiff Christian men ate pussy, the world would be a better place.
Bro,
I just want to say that.
Let's go on record. It's not technically sex. You're fine. Everything's
you're
fine.
Good.
We're
There's
fine.
no stipulation in the Bible about cunnilingus.
Yeah. Backrowpod.com.
The Back Row Podcast with Jamie Kilstein. Thank you, dude, for the time.
Thanks, everybody.
Means a lot. I got to let you go, though, or you're going to be late, and then I'll feel bad.
Right. I love you guys. Thanks for supporting Ross. He's one of the best humans off air as well. And follow me on Instagram so I can get off Twitter.
Woo! And that will do it for today's show, but please support our sponsors by hitting the links in the description of this episode and using our dedicated codes. That is how we pay the bills here at Bolen Media. You can find links to all of today's sponsors in the description below. To check out our other shows, go to bolenmedia.com. We have our premier F1 programming here at Bolen Media, known as Formula Bone, where Jared J-Bone Borislow gives you a preview and a recap of every single F1 race all season long. For all the TV and film fans out there, we've got Oysters, Clams, and Cockles, bringing you the best in the streaming wars and in the movie theater realm all year long. Go to bolenmedia.com/shop to grab yourself some RBP merch, like a Horny for Sunsets t-shirt, or perhaps a Stack Good Days coffee mug. bolenmedia.com/shop. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at WRBOLEN. Follow Mr. Jamie Kilstein everywhere, as he was kind enough to give us some of his time today. This episode of the Ross Bolen Podcast, presented by Bolen Media, and video of today's show was produced by Kade Orris. Go to youtube.com/@TheRossBolenPodcast for full video of every single episode of our show, plus funny clips as well in the form of YouTube shorts. I will be back later this week on patreon.com/RossBolenPodcast with another ad-free exclusive episode, just like we do every single week. Until next time, peace be with you, and also with you.